Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to today's weekly Animatron webinar. I'm your personal Animatron guru, Bryce. It's nice to have you back here. I'll be guiding you through today's topic of interest, where due to a lot of frequent inquiries from you guys, we will be covering the topic of animated masks and self-drawing lines. So all you people out there that really liked the original Adobe Flash version of being able to have a line be drawn onto the canvas as if a ghostwriter was drawing it for you. We're going to be covering that topic today. So for those of you guys who have never used Animatron before, real quick, I'd like you to go check out our website, animatron.com, animatron.com. And go take a look through our help section, explore other people's projects on the main page, and most importantly, stick around on our YouTube channel and take a look at our playlist of official Animatron tutorials. And you can watch through that playlist and familiarize yourself with all of the interface names, the tools, the terminologies that we use throughout the editor, throughout producing your own projects in our editor. And I highly suggest watching those from our YouTube channel. You can also click on the link in the description box below this stream. So you may have to click on the button that says show me more or show more. And at the very bottom of our description box, there's a link that will bring you directly to that tutorial playlist. So again, if you're not familiar with Animatron, I highly suggest going there and watching through each one of those tutorials and get yourself familiar with all the basics. For those of you guys who have some questions about today's topic, again, that's self-drawing lines with animated masks. I ask that if you have off-topic questions, please hold those off until after the demo is over. At the end of this stream, I'll have a live Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions that don't have anything to relate with self-drawing line or masks or animating in general, I ask that you hold off until then. But as we're going through the demo, and if there's something that stands out at you that you would like me to repeat, just go ahead and ask that in our chat window to the side of the stream, and I'll be happy to answer all those questions for you. Otherwise, that's about it for the beginning of my spiel. So let me share my screen here. We'll get started with working in the Animatron editor. So you guys should be able to see my screen right now. Right now I have the editor open. I created a fresh project. What we want to do is show you self-drawing lines. So for those of you who don't really understand what self-drawing lines means, it means that if you were to draw something, let's say particular to a logo, or you wanted to create an animated holiday card, or something along those lines that made it look like you were able to, basically create these words. Oh, had the editor hang up there for a minute. There we go. And we'll add some little scriptive. Hello. All right. So if we had something like this, a self-drawing line means that this line, as if it was a pen drawn by your hand, would start animating from the very beginning point, right where my cursor is, about here, and it would eventually show you the entire word through the entire pen stroke as it got to the end. All right, so the difficulty here is that we're trying to follow a pen stroke that overlaps several different pieces of this text. So what I'm going to try to do is make this a little bit clearer. So stick with me here. I'm going to try to redraw this in possibly a thicker pen stroke, and maybe try to get some of these strokes a little bit farther away from each other. It'll make this project a little bit easier to understand. So I'm just going to click on my pencil tool here on my toolbar, and up in the parameters you can change the stroke width. Right now it's at 2 by default. You can hit 4, and let's see what 4 gives us. I'll just do a quick little pass here. Hello. Yeah, that's good enough. We'll go with that. I'm sorry about my sloppy handwriting here, but I'm using a mouse and it's quite difficult. So if you guys did want to hand draw this and then refine it so that it looked a little bit more legible to somebody who was viewing it, the beauty about using pen strokes or pencil strokes is that you can always edit the lines or the strokes after the fact by selecting my direct selection tool up here in the toolbar, right? It's this second cursor down from the top. And with the direct selection tool selected, you can just click on your line and you'll get all of the nodes, all of the curve nodes that create this pen stroke. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in here for you so you can see what I'm going to be doing. I just want to make this a bit clearer for us to understand what's going on. What's good about the pen stroke is because I created it with the pencil, you'll see where these lines overlap. A lot of other programs tend to connect the lines so that you can fill these holes in. Because this is an individual pen stroke, I can move one side and it's completely separated from the pen stroke that's crossing over it or underneath it. So this is one of those little happy, happy, not accidents, but happy little advantage for us to be able to edit these pen strokes without having to worry about destroying any points of intersection. So again, you just go through here. Let me see if I can get something a bit more to our liking. Yeah, let's go with that. That looks good. The L I kind of want to change. I'll pull this a little bit higher, kind of match the height of the H. So again, with the power of using these pen strokes, pencil strokes, you can overlap your lines, and that gives us the ultimate ability to literally just go through here with the direct selection tool and essentially refine this line so that it's fitting the profile of the word we want to represent better. So this works even more in your control if you were to use the pen tool, because with the pen tool you'd be drawing it point for point. Because this is a cursive word, I use the pencil tool. It's a little bit more natural when you create those lines. Just easier to understand it as if you were actually drawing it onto paper. So this will be a more difficult part. So what I'm going to do is pull this circle out. Want to get this a bit more rounded. I can even bring this one down. And I'm just trying to create some mild gaps. And what I mean by that is the lines here, where the lines intersect. Yeah, let's see if I can zoom in and grab the handle here. Where these pen stroke lines intersect, essentially, we're going to be using an animated mask to follow this shape. And what happens is when you come to a point where these lines are overlapping in any way, it's going to be very difficult to correct those animated masks later. So I'm just kind of doing this as a preliminary, safety measure so that we don't run into a problem later when we're basically constructing the animated mask to make this look like a self-drawing line. So again, I'll just go in here and refine each one of these lines. Maybe give this more of an arc and more of a point at the end. And after going through and making a couple corrections, it's a little bit easier to understand the word and basically get the shapes that you really want to see in these lines. So now that we have our word, what's great about having this done in a pen stroke or a pencil stroke is that we can just use this exact pen stroke as our path. And that leads me into the animated mask part of this. So it's important to important for you guys to know that eventually we will have something that will allow you to essentially turn, let's say you selected this object, this pen stroke object, you will be able to use some part of the parameters here to automatically allow for this self-drawing line to appear and make it look a bit more genuine. We don't have the power to do so yet, and we are working on it really hard. So we will get that functionality in here sometime within the next few months. But for now, this is more or less I want to say a hack using animated masks to essentially give you give you the feeling that this line is drawing itself in. So it's a few more steps that we're going to have to go through, and some parts of them are a little bit tedious. But I just want to give you this example because this is something you can do right now, and you don't have to wait around for this functionality to be updated in our editor. So we have our shape, right? Our scriptive text in here, and back to what I was saying about this being a pen stroke or a pencil stroke is that we can just copy this object because it is a stroke. We can select the object, hit Control-C for copy, Control-C, and I have copied it to my clipboard. So essentially that means I can create a shape that I want to become my mask. And what we're looking to do here is create, you see I selected the rectangle tool on our toolbar. And I'll give you an example of how this really works. A mask shows you whatever is behind the mask. So because we're creating simple shapes here, I want to use a square. Essentially hold down the Shift key with my rectangle tool selected, hold down left click, and draw out a square. Right? So it's that simple. You've created your first masking object. If I move the square away, you can see that it reveals, sorry, I'll do it like this. You can see that around the start point of the orange pen stroke that I put in there, it's just thick enough to envelop the outside edges, which means the point from the top of my line to the bottom of my line is consumed or can be consumed inside of this square. So the point I was getting to about this being a pen stroke is I had already copied it to my clipboard, which means with this object, I can right click and snap to path. Now, snap to path is an extremely powerful tool in this sense, especially for animated masks, because what it basically does is sends the shape, and we're just watching this blue square. I'll scrub through my timeline, and it sends the shape through that entire motion path. It essentially makes that line its motion path. And what's even better about it is, I'll just reveal my layers here. If I hide the pencil line that I drew, you can see the motion path, right? My square has this motion path that follows that exact text line. So that's exactly what we want with this square. This square with the motion path will become our animated mask. So what happens is the more and more of these squares that we populate, we can have them go along this line and continue to reveal sections of this word until we have enough of these together to reveal the entire word. So that's where the tedious part comes in, is actually duplicating this and having it follow the path completely until you have it filled up. So we're going to have quite a few of these squares. So now that I have it snapped to my path, I'll reveal my pencil line again just so you guys can see what's going on. We want to know how fast this word is going to be written out. So that's the very first thing we need to know, how fast we want it to be revealed. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to go back in later and make those corrections because we'll have so many individual square shapes. So what I'll do is I'll just bring my playhead back to 0 and hit enter so I can play through. And we'll see how long it actually takes to fully draw out this word. And because my timeline is set to 10 seconds, right, my scene duration ends at 10 seconds, it happens relatively slow. It's going to take 10 seconds to write out this entire word. So what I'm going to try to do is bring this down in length. Let's do about half. So I'll bring it down to 5 seconds. I just left-clicked on my scene duration flag right here. It has the red line that shows you where the end of this scene is. And you just drag this along your timeline, and I'll drop it at 5 seconds. And now, because I originally had it at 10 seconds, my motion path from the copied pencil line that I drew automatically ended the entire animation at 10 seconds. So what I can actually do is just select the keyframe, again, for my shape. So let's just call this square mask. Right, we'll do 001 because I have no idea how many of these masks I'm going to need. So that 00, I've mentioned this before in past webinars. Anytime you're going to have multiple multiple copies or multiple duplicates of this exact mask, you want to give yourself a frame buffer so that they stay in sequential order. So I'll just add this 00 in my name, and it'll be square mask 001. I'll hit enter. It's named. What I'll do is I'll hide, actually I'll lock everything I'm not using. So the pencil line, I don't want to inadvertently move the pencil because it's exactly where I need it to be. So I'll lock that down. Again, good habit to get into. Just make sure you're locking your layers every time you're not using them. And the ones that you are using, make sure they're unlocked and you can see them on your canvas. So again, we want to take the original length of this entire animation, right? This is still continuing on for 10 seconds. I'll select the keyframe on this square mask 001 timeline, and I'll left click on it and drag it back to 5 seconds. Okay, so what this does now is I'll replace my playhead to 0 seconds, and I'll hit play. Hit enter to play. And now it's going to be drawing this line so much quicker. And to be honest, I could have this draw as quick as I wanted. So what I'm going to do is bring it down to 3 seconds. Let's say 3 seconds is a good amount of time, because then we can play back and see how fast this is actually happening. And again, select your keyframe. Mine's already selected. You see the blue border around our keyframe diamond. And I'll just click and drag, left click and drag back to 3 seconds. So that way I can hit enter, it'll play for 3 seconds, and that's how long it will take to draw out our word. So we have our first mask. Now, when you see how the mask moves, and I'll scrub through real slowly for you guys. Well, I guess because of the speed of our 3 seconds. I'll zoom in my timeline so I can get a little bit better of fractions here to show you exactly how it's following the line. My square stays upright. It stays perfectly vertical. And as you see it coming down the stroke, it is staying as vertical as when we first created it. Now this is okay, but what happens is if we were to make this our mask, and what I'll end up doing is right-clicking on my square mask layer. First. Okay, this is another part to remember. If you have something in a combined layer, that means if you have a layer that has nested layers inside of them, this is essentially our grouped layer. With our group layers, you cannot have a mask inside of these groups because it just doesn't function properly with the way our editor works. So I'll just click and drag my pencil and my square mask. See, they were inside of my layer 1. I'll hold down Shift and select them and click and drag them up above layer 1. This essentially brings it outside of the group. And click on my layer, layer 1, and I'll delete it because we don't really need it at this moment. So what I wanted to show you is that if we were to see the square, how it, let's say right here, right over the intersection of our first loop in the text. If I was to mask this, the only thing it's going to show you, right? So this is the beginning of our mask showing you the beginning of our line. what happens is you start to get these nooks here where it's not exactly giving you the line deformation or the line reveal that you want to see. But what happens is you're going to be seeing this happen so fast, it doesn't really matter. But if you wanted it to look a bit more professional, there's a small trick that we can do. So it's already masked, that's fine. I'm going to unmask it by clicking on this little toggle switch all the way to the left of our mask layer. You see it right here. So this reveals the pencil line underneath it again. And what I can do is, first I want to orient it. The orientation of our object follows this central registration point. What that means is I want it to be aimed down the line. So what happens with this aiming technique is that now I can tell it to orient to path, right? I just aimed it or redirected it. And I can click on, where is it? Orient to path right here in our masks parameters. And I'll just check that on. And what happens is now when I scrub through, you see that the square starts to aim down the line and it follows it all the way through. So now when I turn the mask back on, and let me click off of it, you'll see that it starts to draw the line a bit more like it's a line and not like it's just a square chunk moving across it. So it'll give you the best formation or the best visual example of the line drawing itself. But you can already see, I mean, as I scrub through here, you're not seeing much of the entire line, but that's because we only have one mask. So here comes the tedious part in creating this whole process. So because I already have the first one done, it's following a path. It's going the speed that I want it to, right? It's going for 3 seconds, going to draw out the entire word in 3 seconds. But it's not going to show me the entire word with this. Excuse me. It's not going to show you this entire word with this one tiny square. So what we need to do is duplicate them and put these squares back to back with each other. And this is the tedious part. So what I'll do first is keep my pencil line and keep my mask. And I am going to first of all, I'm going to group them together. So with them selected, I'll hit F8. For some of you guys on Mac computers, F8 may just work right away. But sometimes you'll have to use function F8 to group them together. So once I hit F8, it groups them into a new group layer. And I'll just call this original animated mask. Now what this tells me is that it is the very first one I created. And any one that I make after this are the ones that I'm going to be actually using to reveal the word. Now, it's always a good habit to get something or to create one of these grouped objects, lock it, hide it, and never touch it again. That way you're actually saving a reference point. So if at any time throughout your project you break something about that word, right, about that hello word, you can always bring back the original. And one of the ways to do this is to go to your marketplace. Here's the icon at the bottom of our toolbar. Click on your marketplace. Inside of our market is your your personal project library. You just click on this tab at the top to switch it from market to project library. And select the layer that you want to add to your project library. Now, because there's not really much of a thumbnail here to show, in order to get into the habit of revealing a proper thumbnail, I'm going to toggle off the mask, right? I clicked inside of my group layer. I toggled the mask off so I can see the word hello. I'll go back to scene 1, lock my layer, and now when I add this, right, just by clicking on this plus symbol, it will add the word hello. And this just means to me, right, hovering over it, original animated mask. And that's all I have to know. It's in there. I can see a thumbnail. And that's the more important part, that I know that this object exists. And I can always go back in, access this, this object, this animated object in my library, and I can click and drag it back into my scene whenever I need to. So I'm not going to worry about that now. I just know that it's in my project library. This is a safety, right? This is something that we do just to be cautious about inadvertently disrupting our project later on down the line. Because if I have to do a tedious process where I'm making multiple masks, and at some point down the line the motion path gets destroyed, or something happens that it just does not look right, it doesn't feel right, or you get halfway in and you can't get this motion path back the same way, you're basically locking yourself out of being able to finish the project. So always be sure that you're saving an original concept of what you're trying to put together, especially when it comes to anything animated. Always keep a static version or an original version of that. Okay, now that we've gone through that whole ordeal, I'm going to go back into my group layer, turn my mask back on so we actually see what's going on here, and come back into my group layer. Because I added it to my project library, I like to group everything into one layer. That way, from my project library, if I was to bring it to my project, it'll add this one layer on my project library, on my layers panel, instead of dumping 4 or 5 layers. I like to keep everything simple and organized, and I don't want to overpopulate my my layers panel. So that's an easy way to keep everything in one place. If I want to undo everything or reveal everything as it plays on my timeline, I can right-click on my group layer and ungroup. And this will bring everything out to the top level. I can always hide my mask, or unhide my mask, and I can see everything that's going on in this process. So now with this this whole process done, I have everything saved in my project library. I can start to duplicate these masks and tell the square to stop at the end, and eventually build up enough squares to where it will reveal this entire piece. So this is the more tedious part. I have both layers selected. Again, you want the mask and the pencil to be revealed. What we can do is duplicate the mask layer. Right, so I'll select my mask and I'll duplicate it. Now, because I duplicated it, it has nothing to mask. So there is no it isn't a masked square yet. But if I hide everything else, this new copy still follows the same thing and still goes to the end at the same speed. So get into the habit of renaming your layers every time you create a new duplicate. Again, square mask 002. If you're used to having that copy at the tail end of your title, that's fine. So now that I've done this, I'll reveal my pencil line, and lock everything down because I really don't need to see it at the moment. I'll turn off the mask so I can see the original blue square, and I'll go all the way to the end. So what you'll notice is that I'm doing a reversed process. Instead of starting at the beginning and ending at the end, I'm starting at the end and working my way back. This way I know exactly how many duplicates I need in order to make this process easier for me to understand. I'll zoom into the end, right, the last portion of the O, and I'll scrub through to the end where my square is supposed to end, essentially stop. Right, and that's about 2.98 seconds. And what I'm going to notice here is that between both iterations of about 0.03 seconds, which is really nothing to the human eye, but when you start to put these side by side, and what I'll end up doing is going to the next iteration or the next fraction of my time band, I'll right click on Square Mask 2, right at the 2.98 second mark. I'll insert a keyframe, and then I'll right click on it, change end action, and stay. Oops. Right click on it, change end action, let's stop. Let's see what that does. It broke the animation at that point, so you'll see where my square has stopped. And I will change end action again and stay. And what this means is it's going to go through that entire motion path, stop at this point, and then continue to stay there. So the very first one that gets drawn out is the one at the end. Essentially, we'll be reversing this process. But this is a way to understand which one gets drawn first. All right. So now that I've stopped it at this point, I can reveal my other blue square. Let's mask it, and we'll see what we're actually looking at here. And now that I have two masks, I can shift select them. Click on, I have to unlock it first. Shift select them to grab multiple masks and then combine them into one layer. So what I have is a combined layer with two masks, which is essentially grouping two animated masks together. And then I'll just call this mask. And I can right click on the group layer and make the group layer the mask. So essentially I am using two squares that go through at the same pace or the same speed. And every time I duplicate one, it's going to use the same animation path or the same motion path and play through to the end. So now that I have a duplicate, I can just click on the duplicate, right, my second one, hit this little duplicate layer. It'll create a third one, but I want to drop it down into my mask layer just above 2. So I'll click and drag this new mask layer, make this the third. And trust me, guys, I understand this is a really tedious process. It's one of the only ways that I've been able to successfully make this work. So until we get the additional functionality for the line to draw itself from the inspector panel, we won't have anything other than this animated motion path hack. So you'll see now that I have my third, essentially my third mask in place. They're tailing each other. So they're basically, one falls into place at the very end, one falls into place right before that, and before that, and before that. So this is where the tedious part of this whole process comes in. Again, click on the last mask you've duplicated, hit this little duplicate layer button, or you can hit Control-D. Make sure duplicate keeps it in the same location, so it's always a good habit of using the buttons instead of using hotkeys for this one. Take this new layer it duplicated and then drop it into your combined mask layer. You can double click on the title, rename it to the new, to the next iteration of it. Right click on the notch before, insert keyframe, right click, change end action, stop, again, change end action, stay, and this gets rid of all of the tail end masks, and it leaves, and you'll see the motion path, it basically stops at the part that we want the motion path to stop at. So I'll go through this process a number of times, and I apologize for making this such a long process. But again, just stick with me. If you guys have any questions, please dump those in the chat right now, because this will take me a good amount of time to keep creating these masks. But you'll see the process. Duplicate my mask, rename it, right click on the tick before, insert keyframe, right click on that new keyframe, change end action, stop. Click on the end action symbol, stay. Right? Again, click on this last mask that you duplicated, hit the duplicate layer button, drag that layer above into your mask group. As a form of habit, I'll rename it. Right-click on the last version, insert keyframe. Right-click, change end action, stop. Click on the end action, stay. Okay, so that's the entire process. That tedious process that we're going to have to go through until this is eventually showing us the entire word. So again, rename it. Click, insert keyframe. Right-click, stop, change end action, stay. Select it, duplicate the last mask layer, drag it into your mask group layer, rename it, right-click at the tick before the last keyframe, insert keyframe, right-click on that new keyframe, change end action, stop, change end action, stay. And that basically stops the motion path from going any further. So you can see what I'm ending up here as I drag through my current mask. So it's going to, because of the size of my rectangles, here I'll bring my, or uncheck my mask. Because of the size of these squares, essentially it's going to give me a dashed line. It's not going to complete it fully. So this works better when you have lines that are a bit more straight, a bit more symmetrical, and that follow this type of, essentially this type of shape. Otherwise, we can always go back into the individual shape and make them rounded, and I'll see what results we get from that later. But again, that's another tedious thing to do. So we're just going to stick with our duplicating our squares for now. 8. I'll duplicate the last mask layer, drag it into my mask group, rename it to the next one in sequence. Right-click before the last keyframe, insert keyframe. Right-click on that same keyframe you just made, change end action, stop, change end action, stay. So I'll probably go through and do this a few more times. So we'll probably be able to see, I'd say, a percentage of the O. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we'd end up with something like 100 or 200 of these masks. And I know it's a little unbelievable that you'd have to go through a process for this. But until we get the functionality in here for the line to draw itself, this is the process that we're kind of stuck with. And it still has the same concept as how you would do it in Flash, but this is with animated masking. So it's definitely a different process, but it gives you the same end result. All right, so rename, right-click, insert keyframe, right-click, change end action, stop, change end action, stay. The more and more you do this, you'll fall into a rhythm. I tend to find that this happens a lot with repetitive tasks, especially inside of programs like Adobe Photoshop or Flash. You get into this mode where you're saving out individual images in sequence, and the more and more you repeat the sequence, the more it becomes second nature to recreate the last step. Now in Photoshop, you have the advantage of essentially creating a history tool that will remember the process that you're going through. It will remember the way that you save your files, and it will rename them for you just by using the history tool, which is pretty cool. But I don't think we'll have that capacity for quite some time. So for now, you're going to have to go through each one of these one at a time. And let's just see what we've ended up with here. So I'm going to hide this real quick. We have about 13 in here. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 keyframes we've been able to produce in the last, I want to say 5 minutes or so. So you can do the math on that. Last 5 minutes for about 13, let's say 20, if you really keep up the consistency in speed. And you'll eventually be able to create this whole process over and over and over again. So you'll see what's happening here is they're falling into suit one after the other. So the point that we get to is that eventually, when we go all the way back to the beginning here, let's see, how many iterations would that be? It's about 13, 20, I'd say about to 2.5. Yeah, so I'd say we have about 160 of these duplicated masks inside of our group mask. So you can see again where the tedious nature of this comes into play. But I'll zoom out and we'll take a look at what we have thus far. We have our first group, which means that because they're all stopping at separate speeds, you'll notice that this line becomes longer and longer until they start to separate towards the end. Here you go. You see the separation in the line. And we'll click and drag through again. And you'll start to see a third and a fourth. And this is where those masks are stopping at the tail end. So what happens is eventually all of them will stop at a certain point in the words, in our drawn line here. So just to take a look at this with the hello word actually visible, you'll see the iterations of them stopping at those keyframes that we've been creating and basically ending the timeline from going any further than that. So I'll have another one here and here and here and here and here and so on and so forth until this entire word is full. So that means when you play it from start to finish, you'll get something that starts to reveal that that entire word. Now, what I was saying before, actually, let's see if we can get a HTML5 playback of this. I'll auto start and loop it. I'll click on HTML5 and I'll render a version of this. This will give me a more accurate visual of what's being seen. Oops, let me hide the words so we know that the mask is working. Actually, I'll just hide the pencil line altogether. Oh no, that's what we want revealed. And I'll click on HTML5 again. All right. So slowly but surely, you see this orange line going all the way through the process and creating the tail end of this O. So if we had enough time to show you guys the entire process of this word being drawn out, it would be pretty easy to understand. You just have to put the time in to eventually create this whole word from start to finish. So that's the concept. This is how we would get this done. But again, we'll go back to what I was saying before about them there being gaps in the mask shapes that we've put together. So because there are gaps, what we'd have to do is go into each square, make sure that we're in design mode, because any time that you change a shape, we don't want to inadvertently keyframe it along this motion path. We just want the shape to change. So one thing that I can do is hold down Shift on either of these ends. Hold on, I think it's square. Let's see if we can get this to work. Well, one thing you can do is scale it up. Let's go from the center. We'd probably have to determine beforehand how many individual keyframes we needed to generate. So there's a lot of prep that goes into this. But essentially what this means is I'd be able to, let's say, make a circle. Let me unhide my mask. I'll go back to the beginning of my line. And I'll draw out a circle, let's say about that, about this shape, right? Let's do like an oval. And remember, we kept our pencil line in here for a reason. The main reason is that I can always select this pencil line, Control C, take the new oval that we created, and then right click, snap to path, and it will snap to that line that I have kept in my clipboard. Now we want to orient it towards the way that the line is being drawn. And then click on the objects, orient to path. So now it's going to draw the oval throughout this entire process. But what happens is when it gets to the very end here, hold on, I could drew it out at 10 seconds. Yeah, drew it out at 10 seconds again. So this is something you have to keep into. This is something you have to keep in mind as you're creating these snap to path lines, is that they will not always fall in the exact time span that you want them to. So always go in and make sure that you're zooming into your timeline with our timeline scrubber right here. You just click on an end and zoom in. The smaller the scrubber is, the more zoomed into the timeline you are. The larger it is, the more time you see. So you're zoomed out from the timeline. So I want to zoom in as close as I can possibly get. And then eventually what I'll end up seeing, what happened? Orient the path. There we go. So if I turn my mask back on, and now I have this oval here, and I'll zoom out so we can see the tail end, you'll see that the oval shape is giving me a lot more, or a lot more of the length of the drawn line. And by the time it gets to the end, do the same process again. Right click, insert keyframe, right click, change end action to stop, hit stay, and there we go. So our oval is the last one in line. So this is what we'd have to figure out to make sure that it's drawing it properly, and that each one of these masking shapes are eventually connecting to each other. So we're not ending with a dashed line. We're actually ending with something that looks a bit more like rounded. It looks like it's actually being drawn into place. So that's something that you will learn in time. This is something that I'm finding makes more sense now, given that we have a lot of rounded curves. So if you are to start with these masks before you start duplicating them, I guess for this particular scriptive shape, an oval works a lot better to give you that length, so that the masking shapes touch back to back, and that it gives you more of a pen-like roundedness when it's being revealed on the canvas. Oops, zoom in. So it gives you that roundedness as it's being drawn out. So those are just things that you learn as you go through. And then always, when you've created this entire hand-drawn mask for any word, remember, you want to save these into your project library. So for now, because it's not a 100% finished drawn line, I will put a project together, probably use the same project, and we will post this for you guys to take note of when this is in our YouTube channel. And this will essentially become one of our official tutorials, so it'll be a lot easier for you guys to follow through, duplicate the project, and then use this on your own particular projects. So I'll make that a personal task to get you guys that information and give you the project file so that you can see what's actually being done here in our masks. But you can tell what's actually happening. I'll play through, just hit enter. and it is doing exactly what we want it to do. It's just because we have not created enough masks, it's not revealing the entire word yet. All right, so that is essentially what we are doing to create this self-drawing line technique. So again, I want to reiterate that this is a hack, which means that it's something that we can currently do with the power of the editor that we have currently. But in time, these individual pen lines, we will have a feature on our inspector panel that will allow you to tell it what percentage of the line is drawn from start to finish on your inspector panel. So it'll be a lot easier to keyframe those actions happening at what speed, and that'll get you guys a really good variation of these lines being drawn into place. So with that said, this pretty much wraps up what I wanted to show you guys. Again, look forward to a couple of tutorials on self-drawing lines, and I'll also make sure to throw in the project ID or the project link for you guys to open it up yourself, duplicate the project, and you can create your own. So we're at about the end of our demo here. For any of you guys that have any questions related to self-drawing lines, if not, go ahead and throw those into chat right now. I'll be absolutely happy to answer anything you have on your mind. I'm sorry, this is really complicated. It's more of a tedious task than it is complicated. Once you see it drawing out into place, you'll understand what's actually occurring. The hello text is being revealed by our mask shapes, these squares that I started with, and we found out that ovals may work a bit better in this instance. So again, if you guys have any questions, throw those into chat. I will be wrapping up today's webinar. So I'd like to remember everybody just that we have a currently have an animated holiday postcard contest going on. If you guys want to, you can go to blog.animatron.com and check out our September 30th post here on our blog. And it's basically all about how you would submit your own postcard, your own animated postcard, all of the criteria necessary for you to submit it, and of course how to submit it, and what to expect if you win. So everything is in here for you guys to understand more about that contest. If you guys need an easy, a really quick $100 gift card, and if you guys really are serious about using Animatron on a daily basis, yearly basis, any kind of basis you can think of, we would really be honored to have you guys submit your animated holiday postcards to our contest. And this is primarily a Halloween contest. So I look forward to seeing your guys' submissions. Other than that, please like and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I have been your Animatron Guru, Bryce. If you do have any questions for us that you don't currently have at the top of your mind, you can simply go to feedback@animatron.com. Email us there, and make sure that your subject header has something involved with a webinar or the topic of our webinar, and I will be taking your suggestions as to what we should be focused on for next Wednesday's webinar. So if you have any topics that you're really interested in seeing developed and having me demo for you, I'd be happy to receive those. Just create an email, send it into feedback@animatron.com. Make sure that subject header says something about webinar and a topic suggestion, and make sure you give me a really thorough suggestion so that I can create something for you guys for next week's webinar. So again, I'd love to see you next Wednesday, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We will be running these webinars as consistently as possible, and I can't wait to see you there. Again, I'm your Animatron Guru, Bryce. Have a good week. Have a good weekend, and I will see you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.